the silence that changed everything. The room was full of laughter, light chatter, and clinking glasses. A charity dinner had been arranged in a grand old hall in the center of the city. It was supposed to be an evening of warmth, celebration, and unity. Many famous faces were present, but all eyes often drifted toward Keanu Reeves. He was sitting quietly near the end of the table, not drawing attention to himself, not trying to lead the room. He carried a calm energy that did not demand space but somehow filled it anyway. Ana de Armas entered later, glowing with the confidence of someone who knew her presence would turn heads. She was admired for her talent and beauty, and she had recently become a frequent guest at such gatherings. Her laughter was sharp, her words quick, and her steps carried a rhythm of pride. She scanned the hall, noticing Keanu almost at once. There was history between them, but tonight it seemed like nothing more than two actors sharing the same space. The host encouraged everyone to speak about resilience, kindness, and humility, since those were the values behind the event. One by one, people stood and spoke. When it was Anna's turn, she rose with confidence. Her words began smoothly, about her career, her struggles, her victories. The crowd listened with polite smiles. Then, perhaps without full awareness of the sting in her tone, she glanced at Keanu and added a remark. She said in a light laugh, "Of course, some people believe staying quiet is a kind of wisdom, but sometimes I wonder if it is only an excuse for having nothing meaningful to say." The room froze for a heartbeat. It was not shouted, it was not cruel on the surface, but everyone understood the direction of her words. She had pointed them like an arrow, straight at Keanu, the man known for his silence. People turned to him, waiting, but Keanu did not change. He did not frown, did not shift uncomfortably, did not let the air of insult cling to him. He only lifted his eyes and looked at her with calmness, not anger, not bitterness, just a stillness that seemed older and deeper than the moment itself. He gave her a small, almost invisible nod, as if to say he heard her and accepted the words without resistance. Whisper spread among the tables. Why was he not defending himself? Why did he not respond? Many expected him to stand, to speak, to prove that silence was more powerful than laughter. Instead, he let the moment breathe, let the weight of her remark fall on the floor and rest. There, Anna returned to her seat, pretending confidence, but inside her chest there was a spark of unease. Why had he not answered? Why had he not even smiled or dismissed it? She thought silence would make him appear weak, but the longer he remained calm, the more the air shifted. People were not laughing with her. They were looking at him, studying his composure. It felt as if the insult had transformed into something else, something unexpected. The host tried to move the event forward, but the mood had already changed. Keanu's stillness had drawn invisible lines around him, like a quiet shield. Anna sipped her drink, but her hands trembled slightly. What she thought would be a clever moment had turned into a mirror, reflecting her own impatience back at her. Throughout the rest of the evening, Keanu spoke very little. When someone asked him a direct question, he answered with honesty and kindness. When people laughed, he smiled gently, not trying to own the laughter. Every action of his seemed to add to the mystery of his silence. And Anna, sitting not too far away, began to feel the weight of eyes on her instead of him. She realized something uncomfortable. Calmness was not emptiness. It was strength. She felt her earlier remark replay in her mind again and again, each time heavier than before. Humiliation, she thought, should have belonged to him. But strangely, the more the night passed, the more she felt it resting on her own shoulders. The hall slowly grew quieter as the evening ended, yet that one moment remained alive in everyone's memory. And for Anna, it was only the beginning of a lesson she never expected to face. The quiet storm inside, the night after the charity dinner, Anna sat alone in her apartment. The city lights outside her window glowed like restless stars, but her thoughts were louder than the world around her. She replayed the moment in the hall again and again. The laughter she forced, the words she spoke so easily, the way Keanu did not react. She had expected him to flinch, to defend himself, or at least to look wounded. Instead, his calmness had unsettled her more than any angry reply could. She thought about the faces of the guests when she made the remark. Their smiles had faltered, their eyes had shifted. Some looked at her with surprise, others with quiet disapproval. But none of them looked at Keanu as if he was weak. They looked at him with awe. She had meant to make herself shine brighter by dimming his light. Yet somehow, in that same moment, his silence had made him glow. Anna pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. She whispered to herself, "Why didn't he answer?" The question lingered like a shadow. In her career, she had faced critics, insults, and rejection. Most of the time, she fought back with words, with explanations, with proof of her worth. But this was different. She had thrown an insult like a stone, and Keanu had absorbed it without letting it break him. The next day, headlines from the event began to spread online. Pictures of the dinner circulated, and although no one mentioned her remark directly, some journalists wrote about Keanu's graceful presence, his quiet dignity, and how his silence carried more meaning than speeches. Anna scrolled through the articles, her chest tightening with each word. She realized that the world was seeing what she had failed to see. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A close friend, someone who had been at the dinner, sent her a message. "You were too sharp last night. I don't think it looked the way you thought it did. Maybe you should talk to him." The message stung, but it was honest. Anna placed the phone down and walked across the room, restless. She remembered the small nod Keanu had given her, not as an enemy, but almost as a teacher who accepts a student's mistake. It unsettled her. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he fight back? For days, Anna carried this weight. She tried to distract herself with work, with interviews, with rehearsals, but every pause in her schedule returned her to that dinner table, that moment of silence. Her confidence began to feel fragile, as if built on shaky ground. One evening, while on set, she overheard two crew members speaking quietly. They spoke of Keanu, of how he once gave away a large portion of his salary to help the team, of how he chose kindness over pride, humility over fame. They said he never raised his voice, never boasted, and never carried grudges. Anna felt her chest tighten again. She thought back to her words at the dinner, words born not of truth but of impatience and perhaps jealousy. She had wanted to shine, but she realized now that true light did not need to be forced. It simply existed, like Keanu's calmness. That night, she sat in front of her mirror. Her reflection looked the same, but something inside her was shifting. She whispered softly, "Why do I feel ashamed? Why do I feel like I insulted myself more than him?" The answer was not clear yet, but her heart knew something her mind refused to accept. What she had witnessed in Keanu was not weakness. It was strength born of patience, and that strength had quietly shaken the walls she had built around her, pride. And so what she thought would be a passing memory began to grow into a quiet storm inside her, a storm that would not let her rest until she faced the truth. Crossing paths again, days turned into weeks, yet the memory of that dinner did not fade for Anna. Instead, it grew heavier. Each time she saw an article praising Keanu's humility, each time she overheard people speaking of his quiet strength, she felt a knot tighten inside her. What had once been a moment of pride now felt like a bruise she could not hide from herself. Then, fate brought them together again. A film festival was being held in another city, a grand event that gathered actors, directors, and creators from all over the world. Anna was invited to present one of the awards. When she received the schedule, her heart skipped. Keanu's name was there, too. He was to attend as a guest of honor. The night of the festival arrived. Flashes from cameras lit up the red carpet. Voices of reporters filled the air, and the crowd outside the venue shouted with excitement. Anna stepped out of her car in a shimmering gown, her smile polished for the cameras. But behind the smile, her heart raced. She knew he would be inside. As she entered the hall, her eyes searched unconsciously, though she pretended otherwise. And then she saw him. Keanu was standing near the stage, dressed simply, his posture calm, his expression gentle. Even among the glitter and noise, he looked untouched, like still water in a restless river. Their eyes met for a brief second. Anna felt heat rush to her face. She looked away quickly, pretending to greet someone else. But in that single glance, memories of the dinner night came rushing back. Later, when the award ceremony began, Anna was called onto the stage to present. She walked carefully, her smile steady, her voice clear as she read from the card. The audience clapped politely, but then, when she turned her head slightly, she saw him in the front row. He was listening, not with judgment, not with mockery, but with that same calm attention that made her feel both exposed and strangely safe. After the event, there was a reception. People mingled, holding glasses, sharing laughter. Anna tried to avoid him, moving from one group to another, but destiny was not kind to her efforts. At one point, she turned a corner, and there he was, standing quietly with a small plate of food, speaking softly to an old director. Their eyes met again. This time, there was no escape. The director noticed her and smiled. "Anna, come, join us." She stepped closer, her pulse quickening. Keanu greeted her with a gentle nod, the same way he had done at the dinner weeks ago. There was no trace of anger in his face, no shadow of insult, only calm. For a moment, silence stretched between them. She opened her mouth, then closed it, unsure of what to say. But Keanu broke it, his voice low and kind. "You did well tonight," he said simply. The words struck her. No sarcasm, no hidden meaning, no coldness. Just kindness. She forced a small smile and replied, "Thank you." Her voice was softer than usual. The conversation shifted as others joined, but inside Anna's chest, the storm grew stronger. Why was he not angry? Why did he not hold her words against her? His calmness once again turned her own actions into a mirror, showing her the impatience and pride she carried. When the evening ended, she left the hall with a strange heaviness. She thought about how easy it would have been for him to humiliate her in return, to make her feel small in front of others. Yet he never tried. Instead, he gave her something far more difficult to face: kindness where she expected resentment. The ride back to her hotel, she stared out of the window at the city lights. Her reflection in the glass seemed unfamiliar. She whispered to herself, "Why is his silence teaching me more than any words I've ever heard?" She did not know yet that the lesson was only beginning. The mirror of Pride Yana returned home, from the festival restless. The night had been beautiful on the outside, but inside she felt unsettled. The calmness of Keanu's words, "You did well tonight," echoed in her head again and again. She knew he had every right to ignore her, to dismiss her, or to remind her of the insult she had once thrown at him. Instead, he had chosen kindness. And strangely, that kindness burned more sharply than any rebuke could have. Days passed, but the feeling only deepened. When she looked into the mirror each morning, she saw not the confident actress the world admired, but a woman caught between pride and humility. She whispered questions to herself that she had never asked before. Why? Did she insult him that night? Was it jealousy? Was it insecurity? Or was it the need to be noticed? She hated to admit it, but the truth weighed heavy. She had wanted to rise by pushing him down, but what haunted her most was how he refused to fight. Silence, she realized, was not emptiness. It was strength. It was a kind of patience that could disarm pride itself. Her friends noticed the change in her. One evening, a close friend asked, "What's troubling you? You've been quiet lately." Anna hesitated, but then replied softly, "Have you ever said something you wish you could take back, but it's already too late?" The friend tilted her head and said gently, "If it's haunting you, maybe it's not too late. Maybe you're meant to face it." Anna's throat tightened at those words. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was not too late. But another voice inside her resisted. Pride whispered that apologizing would show weakness, that admitting fault would harm her image. Humility, however, whispered something else, that true respect comes not from perfection, but from honesty. The battle raged inside her for days. She would rehearse words of apology in her mind, but the moment she imagined speaking them, her pride would interrupt with fear. What if he thought less of her? What if people found out? What if it changed nothing? Then, one night, as she scrolled through social media, she stumbled upon a video clip. It was Keanu in an interview, speaking about life. His voice was steady, his words simple. Sometimes silence is the best answer, because silence holds no violence. It does not harm, it only waits. And in waiting, truth finds its way. Anna froze. The words pierced straight into her heart. Silence holds no violence. It was exactly what she had seen that night at the dinner. He had not harmed her. He had not shamed her. He had simply waited. And in that waiting, truth had already begun to surface inside her. She closed her phone and sat in the quiet of her room, tears pressing behind her eyes. She whispered to herself, "I thought I humiliated him, but all along, I was humiliating myself." The next morning, she woke with a decision forming. She could not carry this storm inside forever. The pride that once made her feel strong now felt like a chain, and she knew the only way to break it was to face him, to speak the words she feared most. But destiny would test her once again, because just as she made that choice, news arrived that she and Keanu had both been invited to the same international project. Their paths were no longer crossing by accident. They were now set to walk side by side. The test of togetherness. The announcement came suddenly, like a wave crashing against a shore. Anna had been chosen to join an international project, a film that promised to be both powerful and demanding. It was the kind of opportunity every actor longed for: global recognition, artistic challenge, and the chance to stand among the most respected names in cinema. When she received the list of cast members, her breath caught. Keanu's name was there, not just as a supporting presence, but as the lead actor. She sat in silence for a long time, the paper trembling in her hands. This was no longer about fate bringing them to the same room for a few hours. This was weeks, maybe months of working, side by side, of rehearsals, of long days on set. There would be no escape, no polite distance, no hiding behind crowds. On the first day of the table read, Anna entered the studio with a knot in her stomach. The room was buzzing with energy. Producers, writers, other actors all greeting one another. At the far end of the table, Keanu sat quietly, script open in front of him. He looked up as she entered, and their eyes met. He gave the same small nod he always gave, calm, respectful, without judgment. That simple gesture once again unsettled her more than any harsh word could. They began reading. Scene after scene unfolded, their characters exchanging dialogue filled with conflict and emotion. It was as if fate had written the script itself. Their roles demanded vulnerability, honesty, and tension. And in every word, every glance across the table, Anna felt the storm inside her grow louder. During a break, she found herself standing near the coffee machine. Keanu walked past, holding a cup. He paused for a moment and said softly, "It's a good script." Anna nodded quickly, almost too quickly. "Yes, It is. Silence lingered. She wanted to speak more, to let the apology slip out, but her voice betrayed her. The words stayed locked inside, heavy like stones. Before she could gather courage, he smiled gently and walked away. The days turned into weeks of filming. On set, Keanu was steady, professional, and kind to everyone. He treated the crew with respect, never raising his voice, never demanding more than what was fair. Anna watched him closely, sometimes too closely. Every act of kindness he gave to others reminded her of her mistake. Every calm response to difficulty reminded her of the night she failed to show grace. One afternoon, while shooting a particularly emotional scene, their characters were meant to confront each other with raw honesty. The director called action, and for a moment, reality and performance blurred. Anna looked into his eyes and felt her character's scripted anger dissolve into something real. She wanted to cry, not because of the scene, but because of the guilt that had grown inside her for so long. After the take, the director praised them both, saying their chemistry was powerful, their emotions genuine. Anna forced a smile, but inside, she felt shaken. Later that evening, as the crew packed up, Anna walked alone through the set. She found herself near Keanu's chair, empty now, a script lying on the table. She touched the cover lightly and whispered, "How can he be so calm? How can he forgive without even saying it?" Behind her, a quiet voice spoke. "Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need words." She turned quickly. It was Keanu. He stood there, not accusing, not questioning, simply present. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to finally let the apology flow. But once again, pride and fear held her prisoner. She lowered her eyes and nodded instead. He gave her a gentle smile and walked past, leaving her standing there with trembling hands. In that moment, Anna realized something painful. Every time she delayed her apology, every time she let pride silence her, the mountain between them grew taller. She knew the time was coming when she would have to face it, not for him, but for herself. The breaking point. The set was quiet that evening. Most of the crew had left, leaving only a few lights glowing softly over the empty stage. Anna sat alone, her script open on her lap, but she could not focus on the words. Her chest felt heavy, as if carrying a burden that refused to be set down. For weeks, she had rehearsed her apology in her mind, in the mirror, in her thoughts before sleep, even silently while standing near him. But each time, the words withered before they could bloom. Her pride had been her shield for so long that lowering it now felt like stepping into fire. And yet, silence was burning her even more. That day's scenes had been intense. Her character had screamed, had broken down in front of Keanu's character, confessing wounds she had carried for years. The lines had been scripted, but the tears had been real. When the director shouted "cut," she had looked into Keanu's eyes, and for a second she wasn't sure if she was still acting or living her own truth. Now, sitting in the half-lit stage, she knew she could not delay anymore. Her heart whispered, "If not tonight, then when?" Her chance came unexpectedly. As she gathered her things to leave, she noticed Keanu still on set, speaking quietly with a lighting technician. He was helping him adjust something, patient, even after a long day. Once finished, he turned and saw her. Their eyes met in the soft light. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to step forward. "Keanu," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. He stopped, waiting, his expression calm and open. Her heart pounded. For a moment, she almost ran. But then the storm inside her broke. The words rushed out, raw and unpolished. That night at the dinner, I said something cruel. I thought it was clever, but it was ugly. I wanted to look strong, but I only looked small. I've carried it with me since then, and I need to tell you I'm sorry." Silence followed. Her eyes stung as she waited. Every second felt like an eternity. Keanu's gaze softened. He walked closer, stopping just a step away. His voice was steady, quiet, but carried weight. "I know," he said, "and I forgave you the moment you said it." Anna's breath caught. "You forgave me? Just like that?" "Yes," he replied, "because I knew your words weren't really about me. Sometimes when people hurt others, they're only showing the pain they're carrying inside." Her tears finally spilled. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed, yet relieved. "I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness." He shook his head gently. "Forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about letting go, so the weight doesn't destroy either of us." His words broke through the last wall of her pride. She lowered her hands, her face wet, her voice trembling. "Thank you. Thank you for being kinder than I ever was to you." For the first time since the dinner, the storm inside her quieted. The burden she had carried for weeks lifted, replaced by a fragile but growing peace. But just as relief began to settle, the director entered suddenly, calling them back. "You two, tomorrow's scene has been changed. It's heavier, more personal. Be ready. It's going to test you both." Anna wiped her tears quickly, nodding. But inside, she knew something. This was not the end. The true test was still waiting, and whatever it was, it would demand everything she had just begun to learn. The moment of awe the next day on set, the air felt heavier than usual. The director's announcement echoed in everyone's mind. The final scene had been rewritten overnight. It was no longer just a confrontation between their characters. It was a confession, a breaking open of hidden emotions. Both actors would need to pour their hearts into it. Anna arrived early. She sat in her trailer reading the new lines. The words were raw, almost painfully close to her own truth. Her character was meant to admit guilt, to face the person she had wronged, and to surrender her pride completely. As she read them, her chest tightened. It no longer felt like a role. It felt like her life, her story, her chance. When she walked onto the stage, Keanu was already there. Calm as always, script in hand, eyes focused. He looked up and gave her that gentle nod, the same one that had haunted her since the night of the dinner. But now, instead of shame, she felt something else when she saw it. Gratitude. The director called for silence. Cameras rolled. Lights dimmed. The scene began. Anna's character was trembling, ashamed, unable to meet the other's eyes. She delivered the lines with a voice that cracked, not from acting, but from truth. "I hurt you because I was afraid. I tried to make you small so I could feel tall. But all I did was expose my own weakness." Her tears were real. Her voice shook with years of hidden pride finally breaking. Keanu's character listened silently, then lifted his head slowly. His line was simple, but his delivery carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. "I forgave you before you asked." The set was silent. No one breathed. The director did not call cut. It was as if the entire room understood that something real was happening, something beyond performance. Anna looked into Keanu's eyes, and for the first time since the night of the dinner, she felt completely seen and completely safe. In that silence, she realized she was no longer trapped by humiliation. She was freed by humility. When the director finally spoke, his voice was hushed. "That was perfect. We don't need another take." The crew erupted in quiet applause, but Anna could barely hear it. Her heart was too full. She turned to Keanu, still trembling. "That wasn't just acting," she whispered. He gave her a soft smile. "No, it wasn't." And in that moment, the lesson was complete. Humiliation had turned into awe. The calmness she once mocked had become the very strength that saved her from herself. That night, as Anna walked out of the studio, she felt lighter than she had in years. The world outside had not changed, but inside her, everything had. Pride no longer felt like armor. It felt like a prison she had finally stepped out of. Keanu's silence had spoken louder than any words. His forgiveness had shown her that strength was not in striking back, but in choosing peace. And his calmness, once so confusing, had become the light that guided her to humility. From that day forward, she carried the lesson everywhere, not as a wound, but as a gift.